France is erupting in revolutionary violence. The President of France, the diminutive Tony Blair of the continental mainland, Monsieur Macron, has deployed 80,000 riot police across the whole country, including tanks on the streets of Paris. But it won't stop the people of France, who, whatever else you think of them, certainly know how to protest. The proximate cause of the events that have become symbolized by the Gilets jaunes, the yellow vests, was the imposition of a fuel duty which turned out to be the straw that broke the camel's back in the patience of the people of France with the neoliberal austerity government of Macron. Just in parenthesis, isn't it amazing that the three governments in the world who more than any other lecture other people on how they should run their countries seem to be out of control of events in their own countries? I refer, of course, to Theresa May, Emmanuel Macron, and Donald J. Trump, and all of those three will feature heavily in the mother of all talk shows this evening. But the point is, as Harold Macmillan once said, it's not one damn thing, it's one damn thing after another. It's no longer about the fuel duties, which have, in any case, been suspended and soon forgotten. It has now become a people's referendum on the streets of France against this little would-be Napoleon, who doesn't bear any comparison except in this regard. He was the youngest French leader since Napoleon, and he now has lower standing in the French Republic than Napoleon III, who was, of course, overthrown in a revolutionary upheaval. The same may very well happen to little Mr. Macron. Do you remember all those centrists like Gary Lineker, like Vince Cable, who were telling us, couldn't we have a Macron here in Britain? You don't hear much of that now, as he may be swept aside, and in the next couple of days. Ditto, of course, the British government of Theresa May. The rumour mill at Westminster is swirling with different possibilities between now and Tuesday, the culmination of 5 days of debate on Theresa May's Brexit deal. Some think she'll pull the vote. Indeed, her friend Tony Blair advised her today on television to do so, because he doesn't want to see her defeated. He doesn't want to see Theresa May's government brought down, so he was full of helpful advice as to what Theresa May should do. Seems incompatible with continued membership of the Labour Party to me, but hey, what do I know about that? She may pull the vote, or the latest rumour, breaking just half an hour ago, is that she will amend her own proposals to hold a referendum, a second referendum, in March, before deadline day of March 29, with two questions on the ballot paper. Either Theresa May's Brexit deal or remaining in the European Union. It's hard to calibrate a more gigantic betrayal of 17.4 million people's votes in the People's Vote referendum in 2016. Now, again, in parenthesis, people say, well, you can return to matters. Yes, you can, but not until you've implemented the previous decision. You could run a big campaign in Britain, well-financed, that you want to rejoin the European Union. But you can't have a referendum that says we're leaving, and then you have a second referendum to overturn the decision made in the first referendum before it has even been implemented. And of course, this choice would be between arsenic and strychnine for many of us, including me, because I want to leave the European Union. Neither of those options, in what is reported to be in the Prime Minister's mind, is leaving the European Union. The Theresa May proposals are Brexit in name only, remain in name only. They are neither fish nor fowl, although they're foul, F-O-U-L, very definitely. So what would millions of us who feel like me be able to do if faced with that kind of a referendum? Now, you may say that Theresa May has repeatedly ruled out a second referendum. Well, she repeatedly ruled out a general election last year and then called one. The thinking is, according to people in Westminster, is that this will detach enough Labour members of Parliament out of Jeremy Corbyn's lobby and into hers to make up for the number of Conservative defectors who intend to vote against Theresa May's Brexit deal. Now, whether all of this will work is extremely doubtful, for a whole number of reasons I shall adumbrate throughout the course of the show. And what its consequences will be if it does work, which are grave indeed. In fact, if you want some investment advice from me, I'd invest in yellow vests in Britain if I were you. We'll have to wait and see. And in Spain, in the local elections in Andalusia, the southern part of the country, this week, fascism returned. 12 overtly fascist members of Parliament were elected to the Regional Assembly of Andalusia. And the reason's not hard to discern. Andalusia, like Italy, like Turkey, like Greece, have been left to shoulder the burden of the human tidal wave of refugees and migrants who have washed up on their shores, fleeing from poverty, environmental degradation, and, of course, war. War, famine, pestilence, and disease, the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And those in charge of the apocalypse don't want to know anything about these refugees, about these migrants. They leave it to the poorer Mediterranean countries of Europe to shoulder that burden. And in Germany, Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer, you will have to get used to that monumental name, because she's now the Prime Minister of Germany, the most important country in the European Union. She won a vote tonight as Angela Merkel stepped down. We'll also be talking about Tory food banks, about the monstrosity of Tory MPs coordinated by the centre to drop in on food banks and hand in a tin, if you're lucky, of Fray Bentos steak and kidney pie. Just one, mind you. And to get photographed whilst doing it. Ian Duncan Smith, the author of So Much Misery and Poverty in This Country, actually handed in to a food bank a bag of sugar. That was his donation to the food bank culture which he and his ilk have created here in Britain. I really advise them to open the bag and check that it is sugar. We'll be talking about poverty as it impacts on women specifically. And we'll be talking to a redoubtable campaigner, Joanne Welsh, who is a campaigner for Back to 60. That is back to the official retirement age that women born in the 1950s were fully entitled to believe would be their entitlement when they reached the age of 60. But the government stole their pension, and there are millions of them. It is an election-changing segment of the British population, and unless the government satisfies their demands, they're going to lose literally millions of votes from these women. We'll be talking about a very momentous event that occurred on this day in 1980, when John Lennon, the central figure in British popular culture throughout the 1960s and into the 70s, was shot dead, assassinated by a murderer in New York City. It's a sad day which many of us can remember very vividly indeed. But Britain lost Peter Sellers on the same day, lost Alfred Hitchcock, also died this year. And other things, I'm now told, happened in 1980. Yes, Minister was first broadcast. The first nudist beach in Britain opened in Brighton. Newsnight was first broadcast, unrecognisable now as compared to then. And the Tyne and Wear Metro opened. And lastly, we'll be talking about Donald Trump. We'll be talking about his travails. We'll be talking about the extent to which Julian Assange has now been dragged into the Donald Trump story by The Guardian in a fake news front page story, which has never been referred to by them again because they surely know that it was entirely fabricated. Because on this day, Julian Assange entered the Ecuador embassy 6 years ago, where he now remains. We'll be talking about Donald Trump's problems with Mr. Mueller, who seems to be closing in like a great white shark. All of that is coming up on the mother of all talk shows.